Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Connecting Dots podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Usama, and today I'm very excited and very grateful to be having a very special personality all the way from Pakistan. He is none other than Aamir Ahsan Khan, who's currently the president and a key account manager at Ericsson Pakistan, and they're definitely revolutionizing the way we communicate in the world. So, with that, I formally welcome you to the show, Aamir. How had your day been so far?
Thanks a lot, Usama. So it feels a great pleasure and honor to be here with you. Now I can take the benefit of being ahead of you in time, and I can tell you what will happen in your next 12 hours, right? So I can almost predict the future.
Yeah.
But my day has been amazing. I had an opportunity to meet some of the customers and take some of the internal conversations, but it has been a very wonderful.
Uh-huh.
So thank you for asking.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you very much. So first of all, let's get started. Aamir, provide us with an elevator pitch about how had your professional journey been and how had your decision making helped you in being where you are today?
So I always say I am a farmer, an engineer, and a salesman. That's how I grew up, and that's what I have been in my professional life. I've been with the company for last 15 years, and
Right.
I think I always aspire to learn new things because I think that is what has kept the human race evolving as well, right? So I'm very much
Yeah.
curious about learning new things, and at the same time, always not being shy of saying I don't know, because there are many times when I
Right.
really enjoy the conversations where I say I don't know. Uh,
Right.
what
Uh-huh.
has helped me in deciding things in life is actually learning from others, and I've always taken pride in the benefit of the wisdom of other people.
Right. That's interesting. So, talking to you as a president and key account manager of the company. So, first of all, I'm very, eager to ask you about the art of negotiation because you talk to suppliers, you talk to customers and whatnot. So, is this an acquired trait, and if so, how can one improve upon it?
Hmm. So I think negotiation is something where unless we really don't know what is it that we are negotiating for, it is
Mm-hmm.
really difficult to negotiate, right? So, and
Right.
I always say it is important to understand whether you are negotiating from a position of strength
Mm-hmm.
or a position of weakness. And you can actually negotiate
Okay.
from both positions. But that is really important. And that actually means,
Mm-hmm.
as a salesperson, for me, I really need to
Mm-hmm.
understand what is the value that I bring in, what is the value that
Okay.
I need to bring in for the other party, for the
Mm-hmm.
larger audience, and for myself as well. Without understanding that, it becomes
Uh-huh.
like what we call the bazaar selling, right? And that is
Yeah.
totally very crude for me. And I've seen good negotiators there
Mm-hmm.
as well, but I think in the corporate way of life, that is what is important to understand. So whether we are negotiating from a
Yeah.
position of strength or weakness is important.
Right.
The
Interesting.
second thing
Yeah.
is understanding the needs of the other party as well. So unless we
Mm-hmm.
really don't understand the needs of the other party, we might
Yeah.
be aspiring for something or trying to achieve something which might end of the day we understand is not really there. And the third thing I think
Mm-hmm.
is generating some goodwill. And you can actually generate goodwill by challenging people as well. But you have to do it with respect. So these three things on the top of
Yeah.
my head I think are really key for a good negotiation.
So after you've started in this leadership position, Amir, what myths do you think have been busted for you?
So I think so I started my career with this company. I started back in 2007
Mm-hmm.
as a simple engineer, and I think it's a big honor that the companies have bestowed on me. So I am now the president of the same company. But the moment you walk
Right.
in, there is always this aura of the title, right? So if you are a
Mm-hmm.
president of the company, apparently there might be a very secret safe, and presidents have this privilege or that. But I think the
Yeah.
biggest thing I have learned through years is leadership
Mm-hmm.
is a compliment. It needs to be earned. And I have
Right.
actually this myth that it comes with the office that you have or with a title. No, that is not the case. Deep down in the heart of the
Right.
people, if you really want to get their respect, it is a compliment that you have to earn. And
Mm-hmm.
that myth for me is busted in every leadership role that I take, and the same over here as well. Another thing I've lived out
Uh-huh.
for last 6 years, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought I knew my people very well, but I think
Mm-hmm.
what I missed upon was that
Yeah.
eventually the culture and society is not a stagnant thing, it evolves as well. So when
Right.
you come
Yeah.
back after a period of time, and that is my message to any expats who watch this show as well, when you come back, please revalidate your realities and your understanding of what is happening in the country. So those would be the two things which come to my mind.
Right. So, what's the general scope and responsibilities that come with the title of key account manager?
Yeah. So key account manager, I always say, is very different than sales, because sales
Mm-hmm.
typically is when you do a sale and typically you hand it over to operations, and then it's the responsibility of operations to deliver, right? And you move on to the
Mm-hmm.
next sale.
Yeah.
But in key account management, it's actually end-to-end management of your customer, which
Mm-hmm.
actually means you take care of the relationship. You also make sure what you are selling, you are delivering as well. You're able to anticipate their needs, and you
Mm-hmm.
orchestrate the internal organization to actually push and pull in
Mm-hmm.
one direction. And that for me is what key
Right.
account management is. So, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's one of those roles which have stayed very much the same in this company, and I've seen in other
Mm-hmm.
companies as well. But that's also the beauty of this role as well. So when you talk to any big um, multinational, the key account manager role stays the same. And I think the
Right.
responsibility and the accountability for the role typically is very clear as well.
Right, interesting. And of course, now that it has a blend of both technical expertise as well as a sales aura,
Mhm.
so in your opinion, how should one build a strong competency for the role?
Yeah, so I think typically for an engineer it comes naturally, right? So for
Mm-hmm.
an engineer, I would say it is more about unlearning the things than learning, because
Mm-hmm.
whenever we see a problem as engineers, we think of the solution first, because we believe we
Right.
have a product or a service which actually fits there. But maybe what customer actually is asking for, or what the industry is asking for, is
Mm-hmm.
something totally different. So it is more for us to
Right.
understand uh, the problem in itself and then move towards solutions. So really, for engineers and for people who tend to work with a lot of products and services, I would actually say
Mm-hmm.
resist the urge of arriving at a solution, rather try to understand
Okay.
the problem better. And for people who don't have technical
Right.
background, I think
Mm-hmm.
it is important to invest time in understanding the technology, because a lot of
Right.
this,
Right. Uh-huh.
from the title or from the role, it may look like an executive position, and which it is, but a lot
Mm-hmm.
of it, the success depends on going into the details, going into the nitty gritty, and the stakeholders that you will
Right.
deal with actually
Mm-hmm.
understand technology very well. So I think depending on
Mm-hmm.
where you come from, that would be my piece of advice.
So moving forward, Amir, I want to ask you about the company that you represent, that is Ericsson.
Mhm.
So the company has been here for the long haul. It has been here for more than 100 years,
Yeah.
and it keeps delivering on the promise.
Mm.
Since it has a clientele of various magnitudes, what is something that customers can easily expect when doing business with them?
Hmm. So I think it's the core values of the company.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, if you engage with any employee of Ericsson across the 180 countries that we are serving, across the 5 continents, I think it
Mm-hmm.
is the pride that we take in our values. And it is the value of
Right.
integrity, it is the value of professionalism, perseverance, and
Mm-hmm.
respect. So we engage through those values and based on those values. I think it is also
Right.
the ability to solve tough problems. So
Mm-hmm.
around the world, we are known for taking up difficult tasks and really addressing them head
Right.
on as well. And the third thing I would say
Mm-hmm.
is whenever we make a mistake, which I think is natural for any global company like us to do, we are not
Yeah.
shy of accepting those mistakes. But we do make sure we tend to learn from those mistakes and then build on
Mm-hmm.
that. And I think that comes from the Swedish DNA of this company as well, because we tend to spend a lot of time in decision making, but we make sure there
Right.
is a lot of wisdom in building that consensus, because you review your mistakes, you look at what is required, and then you go from there. But those would be the three things that
Mm-hmm.
come to my mind when you ask me about what is it that you can expect from a typical Ericsson employee.
Right, that is exciting indeed. Other than that, Amir, again, as a leader, you have worked internationally across different regions and handled customers in different countries as well. So, in that regard, what has working internationally with people of different cultures and regions taught you as a person?
Hmm. So I think it actually opens up your mind, right? So we always say our mind is very much like a flexible muscle, but you really
Mm-hmm.
feel it opening up when you work with diverse set of mindsets, diverse set of people.
Right.
And me growing up in Pakistan, I always had this ambition that I need to actually experience the world. And I think there is a beauty in that, right?
Mm.
Because you start looking
Yeah.
at things in a different way. So, first and foremost, it offered me
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity to look at perspectives in a different way. We always thought
Mm-hmm.
we had solved all the problems and the way we are doing things is the best way, but no, there are a lot of other ways of doing things in a different way as well. The second thing I would
Mm-hmm.
say is the beauty of working in a multicultural environment is you
Mm-hmm.
tend to learn so much. So it is not only that you only work in technology, right? You engage
Yeah.
with different cultures, and those cultures offer you so much to learn from. And I think
Right.
linked with that
Interesting.
also is the ability to get a grasp of what you don't know, because typically for
Mm-hmm.
us to understand the depth of our lack of knowledge is only possible once we sit in the company of people who have more knowledge than us. And I think that I was exposed to when I worked with a lot of people outside Pakistan.
Excellent. So, Amir, other than that, again, since you're in the leadership
Hmm.
position, so the boundaries of work and life might get blurred. And
Hmm.
it's not like, one thing stops and the other one starts. But in your opinion, how do you strike a balance between your family, your work,
Hmm.
and your personal
Hmm.
projects?
So my personal take on this, Osama, is I think if we are seeking work-life balance in today's world and in corporates, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's an impossible equation to solve. So I never aspire
Right.
for work-life balance. What I, on the contrary,
Mm-hmm.
aspire for is life-work harmony. So if we really value
Okay.
what we do, we need to put the
Mm-hmm.
life first rather than work,
Right.
and then we
Mm-hmm.
need to integrate work in a harmonious way with the way we do things. Okay.
Right.
Now, time in itself is an invented concept. So, which actually
Mm-hmm.
means we can say that I'll spend 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there, but a lot of it really depends on the quality of that time that we spend in those 30 minutes.
Makes
So,
sense.
for
Yeah.
me, it is what has really played a crucial role in the whole thing is understanding two things. One is to be clear on priorities, and that
Mm-hmm.
also means to be clear on the priorities with your loved ones, which is my family and kids, and
Right.
also the people that I work with. So if that
Mm-hmm.
means me being not available after 6 till 8, then my family and my people need to know. Because if they call me during that time, then I'm not accessible because I'm with my family,
Yeah.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think being clear on the priorities is very much important. The second thing, which is
Right.
also
Mm-hmm.
important, is understanding for
Mm-hmm.
your own self things that give you energy and things that
Mm-hmm.
draw energy from you. So for me, for
Right.
instance, uh, working on routine and monotonous tasks really drains my energy. But then what I
Mm-hmm.
do is I make sure I always have my kit in my office, and when I get 30 minutes, I
Yeah.
go out for a run, and that gives me a lot of energy.
Nice.
If I am having a
Right.
stressful day,
Yeah.
uh, and I know certain friends which if I'll make them a call and if we even speak for 5 minutes, I'll draw a
Mm-hmm.
lot of energy from that conversation, even if we'll talk about something funny or foolish.
Right.
So I
Makes
think
sense.
this distinction of understanding between
Yeah.
what gives you energy and what draws energy is equally important, and
Yeah.
that has really helped me at least maintain my energy and the harmony between life and work.
Right. That's a very, very thoughtful take on that, I must say. Other than that, do you folks have any cool traditions at the office that you're managing right now?
Yeah. So one thing that we do is we actually have two traditions which come to my mind. So one is
Mm-hmm.
what I call a mulakat. So
Uh huh.
we don't call it a meeting, but we call it a mulakat. And mulakat in our
Okay.
language actually means when you happen to bump into someone or you suddenly see that person, right?
Okay.
But this
Mm-hmm.
sudden meeting is there for us to just sit there and meet as two people. And if one person
Mm-hmm.
talks about the wonderful day they had or a totally difficult day that they had, the other person just sits and listens. And that we
Right.
do with each other, right? So I make sure if I
Mm-hmm.
have in my team 20 direct reports, I speak with one
Mm-hmm.
of them at least a month and we have that mulakat. And I think that's a good tradition. Another one that we
Right.
do
Uh huh.
is on Mondays, we have a
Mm-hmm.
catch up meeting.
Okay.
And that catch up meeting typically is like 2 or 3 hours. We go around the table,
Mm-hmm.
but we start with how was your weekend. We don't start with what
Right.
is it that you did last week, what is it that you're going to focus on last week, but we ask, so how was your weekend? That is how we start. And I think, I mean,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then we move from there to the work as well. So these two, I think I would say the traditions or whatever are really nice that we have here in Ericsson, Pakistan.
Interesting. So Amir, moving on from the professional side of things. So how had your academic journey been, and how did it shape you into the professional you are today?
So, I mean, coming from Pakistan, we grew, or at the time that I grew, it was pretty much predestined for us from our parents that you had three
Mm.
options. So for a boy growing up in a Pakistani family at that time, at least,
Yeah.
there were only three options. Either
Mm-hmm.
you would be an engineer, or you
Mm-hmm.
would be a doctor, or you would be a failure. So I decided to be an
Right.
engineer. Uh,
Okay.
so for me, it was predestined that
Mm-hmm.
I'll go for engineering. Although personally, I wanted to go into military, but I
Mm-hmm.
was very clear. My father told me very clearly, you will go into engineering. And so I
Okay.
decided
Yeah.
to take computer science, and then later on, I went into Ghulam Isa Khan Institute. So I did my computer
Mm-hmm.
systems engineering from there,
Okay.
and I wanted to pursue computer architecture and
Mm-hmm.
advanced hardware programming as a master's. But then I thought
Mm-hmm.
maybe I should do a stint in the industry as well. And that is
Okay.
how I actually got into Ericsson back in 2007. So my
Mm-hmm.
qualification is computer systems engineering, and after that, I did a short degree with from London Business School as well on business administration.
So if I were to build upon that
Hmm.
thought, in your opinion, for the people who have spent, let's say, a reasonable amount of time in the industry, gaining the experience and understanding the workflows, how does getting an MBA add value to their CV? I'd say.
Hmm. So I think it varies from person to person, Osama. So
Mm-hmm.
anyone that I take such conversation with, I always say, let's say we are sitting here in 2022. Let's
Mm-hmm.
assume we are sitting here in 2027. So we have a time machine and we have gone ahead. And if you
Okay.
look back, what are the
Mm-hmm.
things that you wish you would have achieved in last 5 years? Okay, so if is it
Right.
career,
Uh-huh.
is it better business understanding, is it a certain
Mm-hmm.
kind of role that you imagine yourself doing, and then
Mm-hmm.
think what are the things which are required for you to achieve that role. So business degree as of
Okay.
today, I think in the current world
Mm-hmm.
is a very good thing to take, but I think the world has moved on, in my personal opinion, to micro skills as well now. So you can take a lot of short courses and understand
Mm-hmm.
how the business works, and the dynamics of business is
Okay.
changing as well, right? So that is one thing. So
Right.
for instance,
Yeah.
for me, last year I became very curious about human psychology because I was managing a large
Mm-hmm.
team spread across the geography, 16
Mm-hmm.
nationalities, 20 countries. And I registered
Right.
myself
Okay.
for a six
Yeah.
months course in LUMS in Lahore, and I ended
Uh-huh.
up doing Introduction to Psychology. So you really
Right.
don't
Okay.
have to go through those business schools unless you
Mm-hmm.
really believe that it is going to add in a certain way to your profile or your experience, and then it is an amazing thing to do. So I think it really depends on what is it that you want to do in your life and how do you
Mm-hmm.
see that adding to your journey or your career.
So other than that, Amir, for let's say technical people
Hmm.
who aspire to join the executive team eventually in their career, how should they start building upon that foundation of, let's say, upskilling in terms of financials of a company, like the nitty gritties of how a large scale IT corporation works, understanding the financial statements, the business flows, so on and so forth. So, in your opinion, what would be an optimal pathway in that regard?
Hmm. So I think for a technical person, typically what I say is doing engineering is difficult, but
Mm-hmm.
implementing it is relatively easy. But what is more important eventually in the career, if you want to ride the ladder, is understanding people, taking a lot of
Right.
interest in people, and that is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
That requires a lot of hard work, it requires a lot of patience, and it requires a lot of curiosity as well. So the first thing I would say
Right.
is take a lot of
Mm-hmm.
interest in people around you, trying to understand what motivates them and what is it that
Okay.
motivates you as well. The second thing I think
Right.
equally is important to understand is the business dynamics. So what I encourage
Mm-hmm.
from my team member that sometimes I coach or mentor as well is just print out the balance sheet or a financial statement of the company that you work in. And when you next time
Okay.
step into a town hall or an all employee meeting, try to
Mm-hmm.
compare what your management is telling you and what is it that you have read from the financial statement. It's as simple as that,
Hmm.
right? And it's a free
That's
education for you.
interesting. Yeah.
And then if you compare that, typically you also get linked with a
Mm-hmm.
financial statement is some guidance for investors, right? So there is no
Okay.
harm
Yeah.
for you to actually, based on the financial statement, draw your own conclusions and then see what
Mm-hmm.
is it that the company investors are saying as well. And that is an easy way
Okay.
for you to actually understand on what is happening in the company. But a company cannot exist in isolation, right? So it is
Of
equally
course. Yeah.
important for us to understand the environment and what are the larger economical, socio political aspects of any environment. And that is where, if you
Mm-hmm.
pay attention and if you read a little bit of journals, because those have more updated information,
Okay.
then you can get a lot of information as well. But it all starts with curiosity and then trying to
Hmm.
understand the dynamics of business as well.
Interesting. So, other than that, speaking about core values, so although you did talk about the core values that Ericsson has, but as a person, what are the core values that are very important to you?
So for me, I think humbleness is very important for a species whose whole gender or whose whole species name is human, and the root of
Mm-hmm.
it actually comes from humus, which is
Right.
soil. The same
Mm-hmm.
root is for the word humble as well. So for me, I think humbleness is very important. And if you really become humble,
Mm-hmm.
then you can actually bow your head to a lot of things. You don't take things personally.
Yeah.
Uh, you don't have objection of what other people tell you or say to you, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, you try to learn a lot from other people as well. So humbleness for me is important. The second thing
Right.
linked with that also is a little bit of sacrifice, I would say. So there is no, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in the current world, which is based a lot on capitalism, I think we tend to look at things in the cycle of years and months and what is it that is happening in my balance account and everything, right? And we,
Right.
what that does to you is you
Mm-hmm.
start looking at everything as a transaction. If I'm talking to
Mm-hmm.
you today, what is in it for me? Or we
Right.
tend to ask is, so what is the bottom line? But life doesn't have a
Mm.
bottom line, right? So I think that is the
Right.
reason
Yeah.
it's important to have this value of sacrifice, which means from time to time you should be willing to
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice your time or your abilities or what you want to do for other people as well, and that has a larger value for humanity as well. And I think the third thing
Right.
for
Mm-hmm.
me, which is very much important, is taking genuine
Mm-hmm.
interest in other people. So I pay a lot of attention to other people, what they want, and trying to understand their interest as well. Whether I can do something about or not is secondary, but I think it's really important to
Okay.
understand what draws and drives other people as well.
Right. Amazing. So, if we talk about the rapidly evolving world of
Yeah,
technology, even as a leader, everybody needs to upscale.
yeah.
So, in your opinion, how do you keep yourself up to date with these changing trends in technology?
So first and foremost, I make sure, Osama, I take conversations with people who can really challenge my
Mhm.
thinking. So,
Okay.
for instance, when I sit with some of my friends who I know are very knowledgeable, and I
Yeah.
ask them what is their take on metaverse, help me
Hmm.
understand why is it that the new generation, Generation Z or others, are moving to metaverse, and why for older generations it's still a difficult concept to grasp, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that really challenges my thinking on what I've understood before, but what I need to unlearn and learn. So I think that is one thing.
Hmm.
The second thing is sometimes you don't have time to actually take those conversations, right? So, for instance, if I have a customer
Right.
meeting coming up and I need to
Hmm.
understand a specific radio product, so I'm not shy in going to a solution architect who I know is expert on 5G and asking that
Hmm.
person, please help me understand this use case. I am unable to understand
Right.
how this would work. So, how would 5G
Hmm.
operate in a mining use case, for instance? And the
Right.
third thing which
Hmm.
anyone can do at their leisure time is I make sure I always have a good mix of the books that I read. So it has a
Hmm.
good mix of technology to
Hmm.
philosophy and a little bit of fun reading as well. And whenever I have
Okay.
time, for instance, in the morning when I am driving to work, I tend to listen to
Mm-hmm.
some of the podcasts which really help me understand the economical aspect, but also the technology
Right.
aspect of things. So it's a mix of things which I always do.
Right. Interesting. And other than that, if we talk about success, again, it's a moving target. It looks different for different people. But what is your current definition of success?
So for me, I think success, I rather prefer to use the word fulfillment or meaning than success.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what typically success has been defined over the years by the society. So we say this person
Right.
is really successful or this company is really successful, right? But I think for
Mm-hmm.
an individual or for a person, what is more important is what gives you joy or what gives you sense of meaning. And in the eyes of other people, it
Right.
might not be successful. Okay, so if I give you an
Right.
example,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about Galileo, if I'm not mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
who ends up giving the concept of saying that the sun is stationary and the earth is moving around,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And for 300 years, he is not a successful guy because what he
Right.
believed in
Yeah.
was considered wrong at that point in time. Till the scientific
Right.
evidence proves that what he was saying was right, and that is when the church goes out and accepts their mistake and they apologize openly as well. So now it became a
Yeah.
success. But I think it is more important for me personally is to have meaning and to
Mm-hmm.
really understand what gives me joy. So for me, what gives me joy is I think to have a fulfilling life, and that
Mm-hmm.
is typically for me based on five things, and that is what I have called my five elements model.
Okay.
So the first and foremost thing I think is to have a strong sense of belief. For some
Mm-hmm.
people, it could be religion. For others, it could be personality. But I think it's really important to have a strong sense of belief. And that is your belief in your own
Right.
self, the belief or
Mm-hmm.
the depth of your knowledge, or the belief
Mm-hmm.
on the ideology that you believe in as well. But having that is really important.
Right.
The second one,
Mm-hmm.
which is more also equally important, is the quality of relationships.
Okay.
So, what is the quality of your relationship with your spouse, with your kids, with your friends, with your colleagues, with people around you, with your parents or whosoever, right? But that
Mm.
quality of
Yeah.
relationship for me is really important. That is very easy to ask. For instance, you ask your spouse, what do you think about our relationship? And you get a pretty much
Yeah.
direct answer, right? Or you ask your kids and you get
Right.
a direct answer. So that I think
Right.
is
Yeah.
relatively easy compared to maybe
Mm-hmm.
with friends or colleagues, relatively difficult, but that you can very objectively
Mm-hmm.
qualify as well. The third thing
Right.
is how well you are able to take care of your mind and body. So, how
Mm-hmm.
much time do you spend in making sure that your mind is really stretched? You are building more neurons, and you are also
Mm-hmm.
taking a good care of your body. So, which actually means you have a healthy posture and you also have a healthy routine as well. And that, of course,
Right.
naturally goes with what you are eating as well.
For sure. Yeah.
Fourth thing is what I
Uh-huh.
call the purple cow. So, have you ever seen a
Mm-hmm.
purple cow? But now you have the image
Nope.
in your mind, right? And
Yeah.
that image will not go away.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I'm sure that's the case with your audiences as well, and they are imagining a purple cow in their minds. But human mind
Mm.
seeks novelty,
Yeah.
and that also means from
Uh-huh.
time to time having pursuits where you can spend time which feeds this sense of novelty for us. So it could be painting. For me
Uh-huh.
personally, it is gardening and farming, or going
Mm-hmm.
out in nature as well. So making sure you take good care of your purple cow, right? And the last
Right.
thing, or the fifth thing
Yeah.
in the five elements model for me, is having a vocation. If it
Mm-hmm.
is, if your work gives you passion, like for you this is vocation, amazing. Otherwise, some people can call it a job as well. So it's a combination of
Yeah.
vocation or job. So for me, at any point in
Mm-hmm.
time, whether I feel I am fulfilled or I am really doing a meaningful work is based on these five things. And typically, from time to time, what I
Right.
do is, being an engineer, I tend to rate
Mm-hmm.
myself on a scale of 1 to 10 on all five of them. So, which means I give a score of 50. I have a total score of 50. And then I say,
Yeah.
today or this week or month, I think I'm 40, but I have room to do 2 points more. And that is what gives me a sense of direction.
Interesting. Yeah, I was about to ask you about productivity in life, but honestly, you've given such an in-depth answer to it that I think it kind of covers the thought that I had in my head.
Hmm.
Um, So now that we are heading towards closing the conversation, Amir, since you're into poetry, so we'll rather end it on your favorite verse or stanza.
There are many poets which I really like. So they range from Iqbal, who is our national poet, to many Iranian and Turkish
Mm-hmm.
poets, and then it also there are many in the
Mm-hmm.
Western world as well. But for this program, I've actually picked a poem by Mary
Mm-hmm.
Oliver, and it's called Wild Geese. So it goes like this:
Okay.
You do not have to be good. You do
Mm-hmm.
not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are headed home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
Right. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Honestly, Amir, you're a person of great depth, and I had a great time talking to you today. It gave me a lot to think about myself as a person, where I stand in life, and a lot to introspect as well. So, with that, we'll close the conversation. Amir, thank you once again for being here with us and sharing your thoughts with our audience. As far as our audience are concerned, if you like the content, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and share it and pass it along to your friends and family. Other than that, take care of yourself, and until the next episode rolls out, do check us out on other streaming platforms as well. This is your host Osama signing off, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.